You're saying that, and I'm starting to think a lot more persons are moving to social media for relationships. Yeah. So, what do you think, or your perspective on social media and dating apps and that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I'll add one additional phrase to that, AI, because, you know, prior to the whole, advent of AI, we could have never really deciphered or tell for real who it is we were speaking to behind the screen, right? If we never went on a video call like how we are on now, maybe say 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, and all we did was sharing pictures, at no point in time really and truly could we have known 100% that this is who the person is, right? Now with AI and filters and so on, I can literally have a conversation with you. I mean, how you know that this is me and it's not a AI avatar image, right? But because the technology is there, really and truly, the technology is there to make me look like somebody absolutely different in real time while I'm having a conversation with you. So that is, a bit of a scary thought, right? So you do have challenges of online relationships, uh, maybe not necessarily knowing who the other person is. But let's just assume that, you know, maybe you've met in school and you decide to take your relationship online for whatever reason. And you have now that space that you're interacting in. Again, it comes back down to the whole concept of perceived privacy and letting your guard down and doing certain things that, you shouldn't do. Um, which you probably might not be able to do in a physical space if you're underage, for example. But it just seems to be a lot easier to do when you're locked up in your room and you have this privacy. But as I tell my students, what goes on the internet stays on the internet. It will probably be deleted from one profile, but might be saved in another profile. It might be screenshotted. It might be downloaded for use at a very inopportune time in your future, which is generally how things tend to happen, right? You might be having the best of time in your life. Things might be going exactly how you want. And then all of a sudden, this video pops up,
It's safe.
right? And it could literally ruin, your chances, your career, possibilities for a scholarship. It's already today digital footprint. And that's the term that, I like to explain to my students about, um, and adults as well, because your digital footprint is very important. It is what someone will search about you, right? To find out, they may do a Google search for your name and say, hey, I want to know about this person. Let me just, kind of do a search. And if what comes up, is something that you might be embarrassed about, then of course they're going to look at you in a different light. Now we have very practical reasons to be mindful of our digital footprint now, particularly if you're a student who is aspiring to study abroad, particularly in the United States, where to get your US student visa now, you know, Homeland Security is requiring of you to share your social media accounts.
Yeah.
5 years of history. So you really have to know how to conduct yourself from the minute you get your phone until the end, right? Because you could say something, a statement, you could comment on a post or something like that. Um, it could be in jest. It could be because you was joking, but that could be the one.
Trinidadians like to do a lot.
Culturally, we have that tendency to say and do things that we shouldn't be doing and saying on the internet, and it could be interpreted very differently by someone who is not of our culture or country. And that could be the reason why you deny that student visa. So it's very important for us to understand our digital footprint and the impact that it can have for us going forward.
Yeah. Let's continue. We continue on the dark side a little because another area that I know that you're involved in, and it's really interesting to me because a lot of things today center around people's mental health. People are a little bit more open in terms of discussing mental health issues,
Mm.
which is a plus, which is good. However, you're realizing we look at social media, we look at metrics, and we look at likes and shares, right? So tell me about how these metrics and social media, how they affect the way young people view themselves now and that self-esteem. Just with whatever information you have on that aspect. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, so mental health, as you say, it used to be, that term that we don't speak about. It used to be something that was laughed at. It used to be something where the response was, "Hey, just man up," or um, "Don't cry about those things." But emotional intelligence, I think, is something that has grown on us as a civilization at large. And I think here in Trinidad and Tobago, maybe not as much as I would like, but I think we are becoming a little bit more emotionally intelligent. Um, and understanding that cyberbullying in all the different forms and fashions can have very far-reaching repercussions. So I like the fact that you mentioned culturally, because you know what I might say to you when we're lining out on the avenue as a joke, that particular statement, if I were to write that same statement without context on a post, maybe about, on a picture that you might have uploaded, right? Um, could be interpreted completely differently. And you yourself might be saying, "Hey, but what's wrong with Daren? Why are you telling me this for?" But I might be thinking something in my head that might,
There's no tone.
yeah, that you think is funny, right? But no, that's not the case. So culturally, we have a little ways to go to understand that when we interacting in the social space, we're actually interacting in a global environment, and we're also interacting with much less context than we would have in the face-to-face realm. So, you'd have to be a bit cognizant of that as well, because it could, of course, lead to defamation of character, uh, reputational damage, all of these things which will have negative impacts on a person's
Yeah.
mental health, right? Now, people tend to, particularly young, um, well, we used to say, just a few years ago, we used to say young women. But now it's actually both, and almost neck and neck with young men and young women. Having this sort of comparison culture on the internet, where I might compare myself to either my peers within my environment, that could be a school, or even family, but more so with, celebrities and popular figures and so on. Um, and you create this perception that you have to be almost like this person, because that person gets all the likes and all of the comments and so on, and they're popular, and I just can't fit in. So you create a different persona, and again, trying to create this second life on the internet, it's also, impacting on your mental state of being, because you're almost having split personalities, right? um and then it has a repercussive effect with respect to you not getting the kind of likes that you're seeing these other individuals getting. And then you start to have this self-doubt. And again, it goes down this spiral of, okay, well, maybe I'm not worthy and so on. One of the things that I've, experienced, unfortunately, with schools in Trinidad and Tobago, um, more so again in this particular one with respect to the young women, when they reach that stage, they tend to reach, I guess, act out by cutting themselves. And that has become something that either is, the thing to do to kind of show that, hey, I am depressed, I'm sad and so on. But of course, I mean, it's not something smart to do, because it can have, very negative consequences as well. Once I questioned, and this was really before we started to look at the reasons behind them. Well, I went to a school in South, a secondary school, a girls' school, and I questioned and say, "Miss," speaking to the principal, "how come so many of your girls wearing sweaters? This is a tropical climate. The place is so hot. You don't even have air conditioning in schools." And that's when she pulled me into the office and she said, "Mr. Dhoray, you're very perceptive." And then she explained to me that's how they cover up. They cover up these things that they're doing to themselves. It was a shocker to me because I didn't really understand at that point. But then, we started to do a little bit more research on it, and it is something that's, that they may have taken pattern from the North American space. So the influence that we are also getting, from the North American space, has also negatively impacted the mental state of being. So mental health and social media, I think they go hand in hand because it could either keep you very positive or it could send you down a very negative path. Um, and recently, I actually made a comment on my social space saying, I could never understand why some people, let's just say, for example, on Facebook, why some people use particular emojis to respond to some articles. So you might find an article about an accident or a crash or someone passing away, and there are about 50 emojis of smiley faces. And I was like, but this is not funny, you know? And you can see for almost every article on any, news media outlets. When you look at the title, and this is a very serious topic, and there will be a group of individuals um, who have smiley faces. And to me, it's like, okay, well, this is not a happy piece of content. You shouldn't really have that. And now, move away from the media house, you might want to write something personal because we also tend to use the social media space to, I guess kind of, reach out for help or express ourselves in a way that we can't really express ourselves in person or to people. And you might be pouring your heart out, and someone with a very, untimely comment, or they laugh at the post. And
Yeah.
then you forget all of the other posts that is supportive of what you're trying to say. And now you're only focusing on that two smiley faces, and you want to know what does these people have to do with me? And it then sends you down even a worse path because we would like to hope that things will be perfect in the social space. But again, just in the same way which we kind of ignore the positives of social media, we tend to focus on the negatives. So it does take a lot of, emotional resilience and intelligence to overcome it in that particular space.
And you mentioned it briefly, but I think it goes hand in hand with this discussion, cyberbullying. Yeah. So, what information or statistics do you have in terms of cyberbullying using social media?
Well, statistics wise, and there are multiple polls that would have been done not just through CyberSafeTT, but other interest groups in Trinidad and Tobago. And we would have at least seen that 1 in 5 students would have either experienced cyberbullying or been a cyberbully, right? So they would have committed the act. Um, I think that might probably be more closer to 1 in 3, just given my, interactions and with schools and the problems that they have on a regular basis. Um, but let's get on to the definition of cyberbullying or bullying in general, right? And I'm going to use one term. It is the repeated act of causing distress on someone in the online space. So cyberbullying, right? Repeated. If you did it once, it might just be a lash out. It might not necessarily be termed, cyberbullying or bullying. It needs to be repeated. And that's important because our legal framework, the proposed cybercrime bill, and many other cybercrime acts that are out there where it defines cyberbullying, they refer to repeated acts. So if you cannot prove, or if it cannot be proven that this person continuously has been, nagging me or trolling me or making bad comments or making bad posts about me, then you can't take them to court. They can't be charged and so on, right? So there's the repeated aspect of things. Um, I personally think that many of us don't know when we're engaging in a cyberbullying activity. Again, it boils back down to culture because we tend to say some things that actually quite rude on one side, but it could also be a little funny on the other side. But it all depends on how the recipient interprets it, right? So we might say something that might joke about a particular comment, a post, You might post up something about yourself. You get a new outfit and you post it up, and someone decides to make a very, you know, in you know, compromising post. That in itself could be, negative and resulting in cyberbullying over time. So we may not necessarily know that we're engaging in the activity. And I think, this is where a little bit more education and awareness could resolve that problem. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have the National Schools Code of Conduct. We have the Offenses Against a Persons Act. All of those things speak about cyberbullying, defamation of character, reputational damage. Again, it all falls under the same umbrella. And once we understand what those things are and the consequences of engaging in that type of activity, I'm hoping that it can reduce the prevalence of cyberbullying in our online spaces.
Definitely, there needs to be something done, and perhaps more done, and be more vigilant. But the question now is, whose responsibility is it? So let's talk parents and social media. What are some of the responsibilities you would say of parents when it comes to children and this social media space?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell parents you need to be the parent in the virtual world the same way in which you are in the real world, right? Because we tend to, again, use the devices as a parent, not
Mhm.
not as a toy, but we often tend to give the device to the kids to supervise them when we're busy. And it means now, therefore, that the kids are going to be asking of advice from, Siri and Alexa or now Chat GPT, and that's the new parent. And of course, the narrative that's coming out of those assistants, probably not the narrative that you want, right? That's coming on as a parent. So parents really have a very active role in educating and bringing up their kids in general, not just only online, to follow the narrative that they would want, whether it is a spiritual narrative, a religious narrative, or just ethics and morals. Right? You will probably want to have a particular approach to doing things, and as a parent, you hope that your kids can learn by example. But if, again, the device is the other parent, then that might more than likely be the example that they're going to take. So they need to play a very active role in, managing and monitoring what it is that they do. So being a parent in the virtual world, by that I mean, of course, we'll have some parents who they may also be afraid of social media. They may also be afraid of internet related technologies. So they say, listen, I don't understand this. I am not going on that space, right? Um, so because of that now, you may have some children who are really doing it unsupervised entirely. My advice to those parents, you might probably have a younger brother or sister or niece or nephew who might be of the same age of your kids. And they may be engaging in that space. So you can ask them to keep an eye out, on your kids. And if you see anything that might be, inappropriate or startling, maybe, you can raise it with them, and or bring it to the parent, right? So that's one strategy. Um, if you're lucky enough as a parent to, be on the online space and be friends with, your children, then two things. Of course, you don't want to almost be the helicopter parent on the internet, because next thing the child might do is just create a separate account and you have no idea what's really going on, right? Um, but you also, want to lead by example. Because many of the parents, those who are interacting in the social space, their profiles are probably, public, and they probably added their kids onto their profiles as well. So you need to also show some level of responsibility. At the end, though, um, parents, really need to interact and engage with their kids. It can't be left to the device of the student and or the kid to use the device, without any sort of guidelines or stipulations in terms of, what you really should and should not be doing.
But for us, those are kids, so we have parents there guiding them. But what about social media users on the whole? Do you think that they personally have responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, it probably brings us to the term empathy in terms of, how we use the social media space. Um, what are the, the online repercussions? If you were to just look at, two news media houses, the popular ones in Trinidad and Tobago, two of the more popular ones, look at their articles and then, take a deep breath and then look at the comments. And you would realize that we've on our way or probably already lost our way as a society based on just some of the comments that are there for any type of content and or article, right? It really doesn't matter what the topic is, but it could be a cultural thing. We end up, saying what we just want to say or we also have we've just completed a general election. I would say we just completed one. It's still fresh in everyone's minds. So you still have that political divide, which also extends to a racial divide as well. And that plays off almost on a daily, basis on the social space. Um so yes, we do have a huge responsibility as users to understand that we can't really be interacting in this space almost as if there is lawlessness and no rules that guide us, in terms of how we should conduct ourselves as human beings. What I have seen in Trinidad and Tobago, however, is that there have been recent rulings regarding, defamation of character and, reputational damage for individuals who would have gone on the internet space and said very, very bad things. And they would have, sought, legal advice and have been able to use our current legislation, such as the Offenses Against the Persons Act, to bring people, into a courtroom and even charged. Most recently, there would have been a situation where a teacher would have been at the tail end of it's cyberbullying at the end of the day, and she was awarded $800,000 in damages. And the individuals who are actually doing the cyberbullying were two doctors. So there's a high possibility that they may have had the cash to pay her. So she, would have received a decent payout. However, we have to bear in mind is that what happens on the internet stays on the internet. So all of the bad things that were posted and said might still exist somewhere, in some profile. Um, but it does go to show that we can no longer interact in that space without consequence. So that's on the adult side. Last year, we would have seen, newspaper headlines of students being charged for cyberbullying. So again, that also, you know, puts things into perspective from the student side, whereby I really can't just be engaging in this space, thinking that there is no consequence. So even though it's not the best as it should be right now, we are getting there as a society in terms of addressing it, and hopefully finding ways to curtail it.
When it comes to social media apps, because, okay, so we have our own personal responsibility. But do you think, in your opinion, that these app creators are doing enough to avoid some of the negatives that are associated with social media?
I would categorically say no. I don't think that they're doing enough. I don't think that it is even a priority, to be honest with you, for some of these social media platforms, to address situations like cyberbullying and online hate. And even though, they may have a lot of campaigns indicating, hey, we want to stop this, you can report and you can do this and that and the next. But having been, there on the ground trying to assist uh, individuals with reporting platforms for, impersonation, cyberbullying, defamation of character to the platforms themselves, and not getting any response at all whatsoever, because what we've realized now is, when you report on these social media platforms, the first um, port of call might be some sort of software. It mightn't actually be a human being reviewing the report. And if you have not met the criteria that the software is looking for, you just be ignored. And 9 out of 10 times you are ignored. And it means that the content remains there, the bully still is allowed to do what they want to do, etc., etc. So I don't think that the social media platforms are doing enough to take some of these things seriously. Uh, and now with the advent of AI as well, I think that we still engage in these platforms on a daily basis now, and we don't know really and truly whether or not the video that we're looking at is AI generated or the image is real or fake. Um, X platform, they've started to actually identify whether or not a video is AI generated or image is AI generated. And that has helped to a certain extent um, reduce the spread of false information on that platform. But I've actually unfollowed quite a few pages on Facebook recently, because they've been using AI to generate content. Um, and while I might acknowledge and understand or know that it's fake content or AI generated content, many people won't. And I think it's scary because you tend to believe what you see just at a first glance. And the tools are so sophisticated out there that, I mean, even sometimes I get fooled. So I think, labeling content as AI generated is very important. Um, and it will help to go a long way in terms of, potentially curbing and anything else. But this honing back down on the whole cyberbullying and use of the platforms for negative purposes, I don't think the platforms are, doing it to the best of their ability. And these are multi-billion-dollar companies, so we know they probably have the technologies.
It's like you say, it's check a box that you're over 18, right?
Yeah, exactly. But they make those billions of dollars through engagement. So the more people they have on the platform, the better it is for them. So they're not really going to, I mean, technically, they probably may not be looking to, actively and removing people from the platform, because ultimately, they may be removing income from themselves.
Just before we end, I just remember seeing something because we spoke about AI, and I'm thinking that now people are calling for AI. Let us know that it is AI generated or if it is human generated.
Yeah.
And I saw something about copywriting yourself. I think that's one of the things that you would have purported. Tell me a little about that before we close.
Yeah. So, it was related to deepfake technology, and deepfake technology is kind of like what I was kind of hinting to you. How do you know that you're speaking to me right now, right? Because we could have used deepfake technology, um, use a picture, something as simple as a picture of someone, and create a image overlay on me. And I mean, I can be Brad Pitt speaking to you right now, and you might not necessarily know, right? Because the technology is so clean and cut. There have been, I think there was some Nordic country, I don't know exactly which one, whether it's Norway or Sweden, and they were looking to legislate the ability for their citizens to copyright their likeness, whereby if it is that your face is used in something that you haven't provided permission for, then you would have a legal case against whoever that entity is to take it down, remove it, or whatever the case might be, right? And there are many different applications of it, to be honest with you. If you are a generally good looking person, and this advertising company wants to do an ad, and they say, hey, this is a nice person, I'm going to take their picture and use it in my video. They can actually, be generating income at your expense almost, right? Um, and AI makes it very easy for that to happen now. So that could be one of the reasons why, they may be thinking about that. But I was looking at it more from the perspective of, utilizing it and creating deep fakes where we may have a public person, somebody who might be in politics or just popular in their public life, and you could create a video saying anything that might be not what they may necessarily say, right? So it might be a picture of me saying, hey, don't worry about the internet addiction. Nobody's addicted to the internet, or you all use your computers for however long you want and play how much ever game, right? And that could very well be a video that comes out. Very easy to create with the technology now, because I have many recordings of myself on social media and YouTube that would allow the technology to take all of these sources and make something very, very credible. Um, so copywriting yourself, would almost allow you to invoke some sort of legislation to say, hey, to this particular platform, take it on. And we've seen copywriting work when it comes to music. So we might create a video and upload it to YouTube and use a short clip of some popular song. And YouTube will say, hey, I know that clip. You don't have permission to use that audio clip. So I'm going to either mute your video or tell you need to take it down. So we know the technology is there to decipher it from an audio perspective. I almost believe that it's there to decipher it from, an image perspective, a video perspective. And that was where it was coming from.
Wow. Well, some very interesting stuff. A lot. And honestly, I think we could go on talking for a really long time about this, because I mean, when it comes to social media, there's so much you can talk about. So much. But I do want to thank you so very much for sharing with me. I have learned a lot, and it gives us a lot of food for thought, especially when it comes to what we like, comment on, and share on social media. So, before we close up, any last bit of messages that you want to say? Anything?
So I mean, maybe we could probably end off by saying let's not think about putting morals into the technology, right? So, we might want to say, hey, let's not deal with the device or the applications. It's not about putting morals behind the technology, but it's about putting, I guess, bringing back morals into how we approach things and how we deal with things in life, right? Um, the virtual space just makes it easier for us to do some of the things that we do in real life. We may have lost the ability to decipher and discern between what is right and what is wrong in terms of how we interact. I think the lack of social interaction, as in face-to-face physical interaction, which would have probably just been, made worse from the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, we tend to kind of lose that air of empathy and sense of closeness and belonging with one another. And again, we have this false sense of privacy when we act in the online space. And, we let our guards down and say and do what we want to do. But if we were to just bring things back or dial it back down a bit, and, maybe, go offline a bit ever so often and, live our lives away from the screen, we'll become less dependent on the devices, and also realize that, everything doesn't need to happen there. We don't need to share everything, and we could actually, just use it for maybe more positive things than negative things. I think it's a growing conversation. It is one that will probably never end. Today we're talking about AI. Who knows what we might be speaking about next time around, right? But it's never about technology. It's really about the use of it. And I think
The
education
tool.
and awareness,
Definitely a tool.
it is the tool. Yeah, let's not try to moralize the technology, but understand the tool and learn to use it properly.
Yeah. So once again, thank you, Mr. Dhoray. I really, really enjoyed speaking with you. And I thank you for your time as we were able to discuss some of the good, the bad, and the responsibility of social media. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Happy to contribute, and best of luck in your upcoming endeavors.
Thank you.